Hi, everyone, and welcome again to Tap Into Your Creativity. I'm hoping that this time my internet is right and Carl's will be too. So I'm just waiting for Carl Heyward to join me. I'm super excited to have him here today with me. I'm going to bring him in. So give me thumbs up if you can hear me okay right now and you can see us okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Here is
Oh,
Carl. And
there we go. Does that appear to be
and there
better?
he is. Okay.
Okay.
I'm hoping that it is. Like, people are
Sure.
starting to come in here, so I'm just hoping that we have
Absolutely.
a better connection. But for anyone that missed our introduction, Carl is an artist, a writer, a curator. He is a National Endowment for the Arts fellow and grant recipient, former MFA instructor at the San Francisco Academy of Art University, arts writer and founder of the Global Art Project, which is a collaborative and it is a cooperative with 17 different countries. So I am so excited to have you, Carl. Thank you again. And I think
Okay.
now it's looking and sounding
Yeah.
okay. So yay,
Good.
I'm so glad we did this. So Carl, let's start again. Where are you now? And tell us
I
a little bit
am
about
in
yourself.
Benicia, California. This is, I think it's about 21, 24 miles from San Francisco proper. We've been here in a live-work setting, which is really rare. I think rare throughout the country, but extremely rare in this area. And it's a cherished asset as far as our living condition with myself and my wife and partner, Akiko Suzuki. It's a former Civil War munitions factory setting, and I think it was also active during World War II. So it's got character to it. It's especially for the States. It's an older building, I think, built in, I don't know, 1850, something like that. Uh, I've lived in San Francisco Bay Area since 1975, and I hate to do the math on it. It's a long time. From DC originally. I went to school in Atlanta for in some ways I say for too long, but long enough to get a real grip on different parts of the country. It wasn't a very inviting kind of a change. My dad was a epidemiologist, a microbiologist at the CDC, ironically, and when he got a gig down there, we moved there, and we almost felt like it was a punishment. As happens in places that are a little bit repressed, or people seem to gravitate toward people who are either like-minded or are a little bit less than ordinary. They don't quite fit the mold, and that was my case in Atlanta. So I played music there, got involved in a lot of improvisational situations. I think I told you last time we spoke that I did broadcasting for a while, so I have a marketing and a promotional background, and that kind of parlays into what I do as an artist today. Uh, I, you know, I, I can get extremely specific about things or just stay really general around this. I'm kind of topped out on talking about myself in a certain, respect. I like to look at aspects of my practice that are supportive of other people on one level, but also, as I talked to you about the other day, uh, my goal and my strategy is that any activity that I'm involved in actually comes back and feeds my practice. So there is kind of a beneficence, perhaps, on the surface around what I'm involved in, but it's also extremely selfish. And I have no problem with that. I'm doing things in order for things to be done toward development of my practice. Mhm.
So, Carl, I know the
Yeah.
sound is a
Yeah.
little bit off here and there, but hopefully at the end,
Mhm.
people will be able. If you're bumped out, you will be
Oh,
able to see
absolutely.
it, and you'll be fine
I
because
can
I
hear
can
you
hear
fine.
you.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
hear me. So,
Okay.
yeah. So we're just going to keep going, and hopefully the interview will be fine. If we have problems, Carl and I would do a separate
Sounds
Zoom,
good.
and then we'll put it
Okay.
up. But I think we're okay for now. So, Carl. Tell me a little bit
Uh-huh.
about your childhood. Were you always someone that
No, that's
I
okay.
know it's hard to go back, but I think it
Yeah.
informs you of who you are today. And were you
Yeah.
a curious little boy?
Hmm.
Did you like the arts? Were you involved in them in any way? Did your parents, um, find you
Hmm.
different in a way? Creative mind? What were
Great
you
question.
when you were a boy?
Um, Thinking how to characterize it. I came from a family that really stressed academics uh, and language. Most of them were. I was raised with aunts primarily, while my dad traveled up and down the eastern seaboard. This is in D.C. And I had a lot of support. I have a brother. Actually, have two brothers and two sisters, but a brother, Kit, who was close to me in age, etc., from my dad's first marriage. And we were kind of curious kids. We were able to. We were kind of not confined. We were kind of contained, I guess, within just the domestic situation. We could play outside just in front of the house. And I mean, there's no grass in D.C. There's like concrete. Everything's a national monument. So in the backyard, we did things like I had a fascination with what do you call it? The soapbox derby, and we didn't think we would enter it, but that is kind of you could build your own racers and that kind of thing, and that was the real first experience that I had with working with my hands, and I really enjoyed doing it. I didn't make the connection that this sense of satisfaction or building something from nothing and having that connection between either a vision or a concept and then completing it with your hands. I didn't intellectually understand that that was happening. I just know that I enjoyed it. And it was a horrible looking car. I know that similar to how I work now with my paintings, I grab the paint and I just go for it. But I remember the smell, the work, the tactile essence of it, the fact that I was working with my brother. And, we had no sense of ball bearings or anything. I think we found wheels from someone's discarded wagon, and we just punch nails in them. So that really doesn't help with mobility. But the point of it is, conceptually, it was a great idea. It was a great experience. I also had an aunt who we lived with, and she was a pretty accomplished person. I found it interesting. I don't know if it was one day or just at some point, I saw a painting that she'd done. She did a small abstract. And I had no way to judge whether it was any good or not, but I was fascinated that this was an occupation or a vocation or a preoccupation that a human being could be involved in. So from that point, and this is probably about 6 or 7 years old, I became interested in art, and I think I just related to them as interesting pictures. I liked surrealist art a lot. As a preteen, I would copy Dali surrealist pieces, and I really got involved in clouds, making clouds, really meticulously painting clouds. I don't have that sense of concentration anymore, and there was a certain point in time where I realized that that place of a total absorption in painting or even reading or writing was both satisfactory but a difficult place to get to, and it was really it kind of mesmerized me in a way that nothing else did. So I got away from doing that kind of detailed stuff. For some reason, people were exhibiting that work. Yeah, I was about to say I was.
How old were you at this point? So
Go ahead.
that means you were very
Yeah,
realistic.
yeah,
You started with a
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. So
realistic work.
14 or so, and I
Wow.
there was I can't even remember the name of it. There was a gallery in Atlanta that showed my work, and it just was kind of out of my control a little bit. It was just exploration, just finding out what I could do. I was interested in it. I remember working on the bedroom floor with all these paintings by the masters, Western masters, and copying them. And there wasn't necessarily that connection around exactly what I was doing. I just found it fascinating, and it was satisfying. It was sort of a form of play, as a matter of fact. So it was more like that. Uh, so I don't know. At around that same period of time, because I think 14, 15, something like that, is either junior high school or going into high school. I got involved in the school band. The choices were ROTC, the military training thing, or playing in the band. And, it was a no-brainer for me. I went into the band, and we played classical music and John Philip Sousa marching stuff. I was a percussionist, played drums, and that led into other experiences as a musician. But the way that it really informs my practice today is playing in bands, and I created a couple of them. We did everything from James Brown to whatever was happening at that point. I found that working with people, I got a lot of lessons about communicating with people and expectations of people. Playing in a band is like being married to 3 or 4 people, or 5 or 6, or whatever the number of members of your ensemble are. And it isn't always a satisfying experience, but it was an invaluable one because, first and foremost, we were creating something, be it sound or, in this case now with the Global Art Project, we created plastic arts, 2D and 3D objects that did not exist otherwise and could not exist without the cooperation of more than one person. And for somebody, I'll tell you something. I've got a lot of contradictions, and I don't think that's surprising. I think we all do, but I'm aware of some of mine. I remember around that same period of time, 14, 15, 16, I don't know what the situation was, but I had a conversation or a confrontation with my dad, and the gist of it is that he called me a misanthrope. And of course, I had to go to the dictionary to figure out what that was. And I says, well, no, I don't hate people, but I figured what it really meant was that I was fearful and I was not secure in my place in the world. And there's a lot of obvious reasons for that we could get into or not, culturally, socially, ethnically, racially, blah, blah, blah. Welcome to the USA. So we get that. And that kind of resonated in my head, or it stayed with me. Wow, what am I doing that makes my dad think that I'm a misanthrope? And as I say, I've kind of resolved that it's a desire to feel safe and to I'm not really a confrontational person. You reach a certain point and it's like boom, like anyone else. But what I've done with that was because I also recognize that there is a benefit to working with people in a collaborative way, that I've consciously gathered around me people that if we're not like-minded, because a lot of times it's people with completely opposite backgrounds and orientations on all levels, but it's sort of like a humility. It's bringing humility into place where you recognize that there is a universal benefit sometimes to just getting out of your ego, getting out of the way, and doing something for the better good. And, that's not to sound noble in any way. It's just kind of a recognition of if you want this kind of thing to happen, you've got to very often commit yourself with other people, communicate with other people, and just kind of let go of the ego. So that's saying a whole lot of something. I don't know if that means anything.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I think it does. I think you touched in many, important aspects of surrounding yourself with community and people that think alike,
right.
And that come from different backgrounds, but you have the same, the same goals and working with others. And I've always said that. To reach out to your community at large, and find those people that, that you have something in common, and together you're stronger in a way. And finding that connection with those people has led you now to work with people all over the world, collaborating with people all over the world. And you have one common goal. And so I think that, having that is so important, and to, realize at such a young age, that, you know, that you needed that in a way, to feel safe, maybe.
You kind of lose yourself among others. You know what the deal of it is that I'm a pretty tall person, and there's really no hiding. I mean, what is it? You don't hide your light under a basket or bushel or whatever. And you know, I've got this kind of come hither, stay away from me kind of persona, I think. And it is what it is. I mean, I just kind of recognize the way that I'm wired, and I don't judge it anymore, and I don't make excuses for it. I just call it for what it is, and I just do the best with what I got to work with. One of the things that you just mentioned, too, is in collaborating with other people and kind of letting your guard down or opening yourself up is being able to share resources that would not be available to you otherwise. And you have no idea how valuable you are and what resources within yourself or your experience that may not even be aware, you may not be aware of, or one may not be aware of, but is obvious to other people. And so again, it's this.
Right. And I always say, when you get out of your comfort
zone, you mean like now?
That's when you learn the most. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Like now, you know, and you know, just in life, I always feel like when you put yourself in a situation when you're not comfortable, when you're new to it, when you don't think you can do it, it's going to be your best self. Your best self will come out from that. And so I wholeheartly believe in doing that, and doing that periodically, because I think if you don't do that, you stay in a place where you don't grow, in a place of just mediocrity. And so the more you can push yourself to be on the uncomfortable, to find the comfortable, that's where the growth comes. Yeah, that's I
think there's also something to be said about moderating your energies as well, and kind of picking and choosing where you put your energies. And all of this is everything that you said, probably some of the things I've said, but you know, prior to this moment, are important. And as you go on, there are other elements that I don't want to say I tick off, that I just become aware of, that are also important. And as I've gotten older, that brain that is running like it's still 25 years old is completely at odds with what I can physically do and stay healthy. And so that's something that I don't know if I've come to terms with it, but it's something that I'm aware of. And I've had to learn to say no. Primarily, I've had to learn to say, maybe later, Carl, that's a great idea, but just chill out, dude. You know what I mean? And to get a little more realistic about what could really be accomplished in the short life. I think that I do maintain this idea about experimentation, be it in film, music, the plastic arts, or whatever. That's exciting to me. I don't like things that are mediocre. If somebody else is already doing it, then that's fine. That's covered, and I don't need to repeat that or even enter into it. I need to find something that keeps me involved and interested, and that's the only way that you know, I see myself continuing. Which, for me, if you don't mind, it kind of piggybacks into Global Art Project. It's a project that we actually started on the heels of some online projects about 10, 11 years ago. I was invited to go to. Yeah. Please.
Let me put a pause in the Global Art Project, because we're going to come back to that, and I want you to tell us all about that. Yes. But before we jump into that, when did you know that this was your path and that you were going to follow it through, and that you were going to be an artist, a teacher? When did that click inside of you that you said, I could actually do something with finance?
Again, great question. I think about that, you know, periodically, even recently, and the honest answer is I don't know. I do know that I always had an interest. I had a lot of opportunities. I had some interesting mentors across the board. who gave me an entree into either teaching or the arts or presenting my work, etc. And I think it's the old adage, don't quit your day job. I always had a day job, so to speak, even though they were also involved in the arts, working with the San Francisco Symphony in their development department or companies that they contracted under. I worked in a box factory one time, and I approached that as kind of a conceptual art performance sort of a situation. It was kind of funny. So all of the work that I've done has been arts related, and I think that as the way you posed the question, I think that there was probably a little bit of hesitance to internally admit or commit to the fact, hey, you know what, you're an artist. I remember Yolanda Lopez here in the San Francisco Bay Area. She was a friend and an incredible artist, community leader, et cetera, in San Francisco Bay Area. But I can't really remember what the situation was, but what she told me really stuck with me. And she says, basically, don't make an excuse for it, man. You're an artist. Forget about it. Just go for it, you know. And so a lot of the resistance and hesitance that I had, and you got to keep in mind, I come from an academic background, from a dad who was a scientist. And it was like, yeah, okay, why don't you do the music and the art as a hobby? You know what I mean? And I understand where that comes from, but there wasn't that support for it. And so it was sort of like some combination of maybe being rebellious as a young person. Also, we became professional, especially with doing music, and it was like, look, here's a check. We just played at some mafia nightclub. Fantastic. Life is good. You know what I mean? And so there was always this back and forth before really making a commitment. I think after I moved out to San Francisco in '75, completely on my own at 24, I was actually pursuing a radio career at that point, and on the side doing art. The long and the short of it is I got blacklisted because of a union situation with the radio, and I found a spare time, if you will, and I decided, I think, now that you pushed me, that probably around 1978, 79, I made a complete commitment to pursue the arts, and here we are today.
And is that when you also had a shift in from what you were painting when you were 15, which was more realistic, right, to the abstract world? Is that how it started then, by experimenting, trial and error?
I think part of it was just becoming aware of other arts and artists. I'd said a little earlier, I kind of alluded to it, that if there are people who are doing things, I don't need to do that. And there are people who paint, draw more realistically than I do. I have nothing to add to that vocabulary. What I have found through what's quote abstract expressionism, or expressing myself through the artwork, seems to be more satisfactory to me as an abstract artist. And I also find that most difficult because in one way it's easily accessible, but to be cohesive or coherent, it's an incredible challenge each and every time. There's some place that, for me, I have to dig really deep. There's a deep place from which satisfactory expressionistic work or abstract work comes from. So I find it very difficult. I don't take it for granted. I don't have that same sense of satisfaction from a realistic art that I produce anyway. Does that answer your question?
See, yeah, I think that it does, and also being a non-objective painter, you have your own language, and you create your own by your design, color, definition,
right,
balance, all that, comes into, I'm sure when you're working, it comes from maybe a gut, but then maybe your head. How is your process when you're starting a blank canvas or a blank piece of paper? Where is your head? do you start with your head, or do you start with your heart?
It really
Both?
depends. It depends on where I'm at that day. Maybe I'm head heavy one day. Maybe I'm just, emotional, automatic, spontaneous one day. But generally speaking, and though I won't pursue it, this also overlaps into what I do at the workshops, mentoring, and even Global Art Project. There's a concept that I work with that I transmit, maybe, called no mind. And no mind is not really saying eliminate thought. It's saying it's not just thought, it's not just mind, and that touches upon, I think, what you were mentioning just now.
Yes.
So the way that where I want to go is, or what I want to, God, I even hate the word teach, but what I talk about is this balance, body, mind, spirit, and I don't depend on just what I'm thinking. I don't depend on just what I'm feeling. I understand that I can follow each of those routes, but at some point in time, for it to be cohesive, coherent, satisfactory to me, they need to meet those set of criterion. With some of the exercises that I do, it's painting behind your back, it's painting blindfold, whatever, as an opening exercise, so that it's just spontaneous, where we're working outside of our habitual way of working. And then there's a point where you've got creativity or spontaneity, you've got the gut, and then there's a point where you assess, where you bring in the intellectual process. They're separate processes, and to mix them up, I think the most common result is I'm lousy or I'm stuck. So the idea is just go for it. Just go for it. Go for it as an exercise. Go for it as a release. Step back from it. Assess what you've done, what you've got. Maybe you need to tear it up, frag it up, and start from scratch again, or utilize some of those elements to build something else. All of it has your identity. It has your imprint on it. All of it is authentically you, even the, quote, bad stuff or the mistakes. There's something that can be done with it, something that can be done with it, even if it's just a point of conversation. So from no mind, which is closer to blank slate or Zen mind, beginner's mind, you start to add and build upon it, add and build upon it. And I think what's, for me, important, what probably keeps me going, is to be non-judgmental. That's not to say to not critique what I'm doing, but to not judge what I'm doing, to not judge myself. And those are also separate things as well.
I think that's the hardest part of an artist, whatever, wherever you are in the process of it, that judgment comes in, and it could either paralyze you, or you can say, wow, it's brilliant, and leave it. And so I think we all have to work on that, right?
It's different, and it
hard.
changes. I mean, there's not some rote process. There's not this reference book that says do this, and this will be the result. For me today, that's why it's interesting to do these kind of interviews. And I look back on the playbacks sometime later, and I think in one of the promos I mentioned that this is what I'm thinking today. This is how I assess who I am and what I'm about today. Tomorrow may be a whole other deal. I may laugh at this. I may cringe at everything that I'm saying right now, but that's okay, because at this moment, this is the best that I can do, and that's all right. I take it or I leave it. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, living in the present, and that's super important. And
sure.
One more question: do you work in multiples at the same time, or do you focus on one piece when you're working? How do you?
Answer is pretty much the same to the body, mind, and spirit. Where we resolve in being spontaneous, or do I plot it out? The answer is yes. The thing of it is that I know when I know. I know if I have to kind of take care of myself a little bit, I will go and start doing work as a therapy. It's just, I've had a horrible day, and it's like I need to go into the studio and take care of that. And I know that because I've had that experience, and instead of taking aspirin or dangerous street products, I will go into the studio, and that helps me. if I have a commission, of course, that's extremely, thought involved and, consumer affirmative and all of that. If I'm working and just want to create some work, as I say, it's not to evade the question. I know when I know. I know if I need to execute something and do some sketches or approach something very analytically. And I know when I just have a feeling and I want to find out what I can do with paint. Who am I today? I say that, for me, art practice is kind of a weather report of the soul, and it isn't always sunny and bright. It is what it is.
Ah, I love that. I think I'm going to write it and put it up there in my studio. That's a great,
check in the mail.
Quote.
Yes.
May I ask? Yes, please. Who inspired you?
Oh boy. Well, because my background is kind of varied, creative people inspire me. All right, and so that's across the board. It could be music, it could be literature, it could be the plastic arts. People that I think are important to me. Duchamp is important to me. James Marshall is important to me. Carrie Walker is. Carrie Mae Weems is important to me. Basquiat is important to me. What's his name? Oscar Murillo, I think, is an incredible artist and painter. He's important to me. So, I mean, that's just, throwing some names out. Old Pink Floyd's important to me. Jimi Hendrix is important to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I think this is a perfect time to show the donation piece.
You keep talking. I have to go grab it. I forgot to get it. Keep talking.
Okay, so
sorry.
So Carl is generous enough to donate this piece to Feeding America, and I'm happy to say that actually the piece sold, and we made 3,500 meals for Feeding America. And so I am so happy and so thrilled to announce that it just sold today, and I am extremely happy. And thank you so much, Carl, for your generosity. And can you talk a little bit about this piece?
I can. It's called Muscle Memory, and I'll read the back up. You can hear me, yeah? It's 17 by 14 inches on a wooden panel. It's a mixed media piece, and it contains somewhere within it a frag or a fragment from a discarded piece from one of our Gap artists, and a friend and mentor, Heather Wilcoxon, here out of the Bay Area. What can I say about it? It's something that probably came out of, was project-oriented perhaps, and the thing about what we do with the frags is we kind of make them our own. And this is kind of a unique one in that it only took one other piece to add to it, or the fragment in here, and then I did whatever the heck else I did with it. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not being very articulate about it, but here it is. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you to our collector who bought it, because we're doing so amazing work as a community of artists, and together, like I said, we're stronger. We're at $35,000 right now for Feeding America. That means it translates to 350,000
That's amazing.
For people in need of food.
Well,
so
could I
couldn't do it without you. So
absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. Well, I'm thinking, since actually in the course of the interview that someone was kind enough to pick up on that piece, I'd like to offer another one, if I may. Does that break protocol? Yeah, I know. It's like, so here's another piece. This is a little bit smaller. It's out of a series that I had to look and see names of things. It's called Falling Away. It's a series. This is the 17th piece in that series. It's 13 by 11, obviously on a wooden panel, blah, blah, blah. So if someone is interested and they'd like to not so much
Wow.
collect my work, I mean, of course, I'm so flattered and thrilled, but to actually support the charity because I've been reading more and more about it, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity. So if you'll partner with me, yep,
This is amazing. I mean, if you guys are interested in this painting,
yep,
please DM me or Carl. We're going to ask $350 for this incredible piece. You will not find this price
act
anywhere,
now.
believe it or not. Carl is act now, help people in need. And we will come back at the end to show it again. And I will open the comments for questions. But right now, Carl, can you show us
Yeah,
around your studio a little bit
sure.
and show us a little bit about your
Well,
life
I tell
in
you
your
what, I'm going
studio?
to unscrew this. I no longer see the little flippy thing. You know what I mean? I see a place.
Oh, it should be in the
Really?
middle of the
Let's see.
screen, maybe,
Oh,
or on the side or
okay, no,
something.
I see
If
it.
you,
It's lost in my light.
if
There
you,
you go. Okay, so anyway,
there we go.
I've
There
just
we go.
got a number of items because I had a consultant come by yesterday. It was a very busy day yesterday. We've got some things on the wall right now out of a couple of series. This piece, I can barely see, I can see it. It's called Yo-Yo, and it started as kind of this Stuart Davis architectural, geometric kind of a thing with the kind of colors that I think he uses. And then I wasn't satisfied with it. I was satisfied that it wasn't a bad piece, but I decided to really kind of inject my own Carlness into it, and so it got a little crazy. And because I called it Yo-Yo because someone had asked, my friend Jennifer Perlmutter asked me, why did I call it that? Because I went back and forth, up and down with it so much conceptually. So that's Yo-Yo, and I had just seen a show with my good friends Chiomi and Aldo Longo down at Sonoma Valley Museum a couple of weeks ago, and it was of Raymond Saunders. And he's another important artist for me, since you'd asked. And I just like his
Yeah.
use of assemblage, of mark making. I should also throw in Twombly, like everybody else. Yeah, I love Twombly. And so I can't. I really was inspired. I mean, I don't know that I'm going to be inspired by things. It kind of happens. So I was inspired and came home after the long drive back from Sonoma, and I made that piece, and I'm happy with that. And don't ask me the name of.
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead,
you
please.
know, no,
Yeah.
if you go back to it for 1 second, you can see,
Yeah.
your own language of forms and formations,
Mm-hmm.
and very
Mm-hmm.
vertical, very geometric, and you break it
Mm-hmm.
off with the mark making, which is so important because it gives you
Mm.
the interest of the push and pull and coming back into it.
And I
So
like that
I really
description
appreciate
as
that.
well. That's that for me. I can talk about other people's work, and I do that. And when I'm looking at my stuff, and maybe this is a common experience, I can look at it and I can go back months later if it's still around, and I can tell whether it's a successful piece or if it feels authentic. It feels like me. I see myself in it, but I can't describe it in the way that you just. Are you looking for a job? Yeah.
I don't know why, but I kind of see, and it's the same thing here. It's like you have
Mm-hmm.
parallel lines. And so it's
Yes.
almost like, you're a musician, right? And so
Yep.
it almost
Yep.
has a beat to it. And so, all the vertical lines and they stop at some point, and then you have a horizontal, and then you have a vertical. And so I feel like it's the
Yeah.
rhythm of the beats of the
You
music. Maybe, maybe you're intended to do that
well,
or not, but
it's
that's
funny
how
you
I
say
see it.
that. I think some time ago, I had friends that both I know or people who are not familiar with the work or me absolutely talk about the rhythms, the musical or the musicality of my work. And it's not conscious, it's just kind of innate. And I'm not surprised because I am a musician, or that was my first foray into creativity. So I'm just kind of walking around now.
And I think the other, and I think also the other thing that is important to realize is that you haven't lost the
Yeah.
14-year-old kid in you.
Mm.
You can see a lot of play in your work, and the way that you use your mark making, and the effortlessness of it feels that you still have that child kind of inside of you. And I think that is such a plus to be able to have that, because it's so cool when you can just
Yeah.
do and not think. And I think that some of your pieces are just like that.
Yeah, I think that that's accurate. I think the only thing that this is my, you just, by the way, you gave me a dictum to not clean up the studio. I says, damn, why didn't you tell me that a while ago? Because this is cleaned up.
Well, no, because I so what are your favorite materials that you have on your table? What do you have any
Yeah,
specific paints
yeah.
that you
Well,
like, or brushes that you
how's
like,
about
or
this? I like expensive paints, and that doesn't mean that I use them all the time. I mean, I use, say in the workshops, I use kind of this elementary school paint because it's a workshop. It's disposable. For my own practice,
right, right.
I can use anything from the Blick stuff to the Utrecht stuff to Windsor. It really depends on what the economics are like, to be honest. I love oil stick. I've got a
Okay.
lot of chalk here. Sometimes things come to me. People give me stuff. I use it. Here's oil pastels. Got all kinds of stuff, you know.
Do you do acrylic, and then on top you'll use
Yes,
those
absolutely.
oil
Oil stick,
crayons, or
yeah,
do you use
oil
oil
stick, oil
everything?
pastels,
Okay.
and what do you call it? Graphite crayons. I like those guys a lot. Yeah. Well, I kind of enjoy just this kind of walking
And
around. This
then,
is cool. Hello.
right? I think that you find, okay,
Okay.
so now we go into Gap. What is
Well,
that? Is
yeah,
the book
I'll give
several
you this.
books?
Collective, collaborative, what is it, 78 members in 17 countries right now. This is a piece. I'm going to ask Akiko to come forward and hold the camera for us. This, for instance, is from one of our members, Martino Rossetti, and he's out of Rome. We have the
Oh, wow.
books are all under the umbrella name Dislocations. And so what he did, he accepted some frags from some of our members, maybe myself, Akiko, etc., and he created his own artist books on really fine paper, Japanese bind, and this is probably as elaborate as we get. And I just flipped through a couple of his pieces. He's an incredible
Oh,
artist.
look at
Incredible
those
artist.
mark makings.
Incredible artist.
Wow.
Martino Rossetti. Yep,
Love that
yep.
one.
He now with Gap. What's interesting too is that there's an annual membership commitment, and one of the ways that we get our folks involved is that they do in-kind service, and that in some cases can be that they offer support with web design or publicity. In his case, in Rome, in the Ostia district last year, we were able to get a show called Yes, Ostia, and that show will actually travel to southern Italy during our month-long residency in May. So you can, if you've got talents, if you've got ability, and something like Gap appeals to you, there are possibilities to use your talent, your
Yes.
resources, your connections. This, by the way, is a 1960s automobile map book out of Italy as well that we picked up a set of 3 of them. This is the first one, Atlante Automobilistico, and we passed it around to some of our members in the course of our residencies, and we just allowed people to mark in them. Yep, yep. This is a
Amazing.
lot of the stuff as a keynote.
I think this is it's a perfect time for you to go back
Mm-hmm.
to your seat, and we can talk about
Okay.
Gap, because I think it's so important, and you've created this incredible, amazing group of artists and community around the world, and how does it work, and what does GAP stand for, and how did you come up
Well,
with
those are a
this
lot of
idea?
questions. GAP is
I know.
I'm messing with you.
I'm
GAP is
sorry.
Global Art Project, and I was beginning to say probably 2011 or so. I was involved in a project that had 500 artists, 3,000 cards, postcard size arts, and we did a one-for-one exchange. This showed me that there's a lot of people out there that responded to this kind of group facility. Then 2 years later, 2013, a good friend now, Monica Lisi in Lecce, the site of where we'll do our residency in May, came upon me, I guess you'd say, on social media, and she invited me to do a show in Lecce, a one-man show, of my photographs, as a matter of fact. And I didn't even talk about, other parts of my, trajectory, but I was going to be Ansel Adams at one time, and, then I figured, why bother? There's already Ansel Adams, so I quit doing it, but I did film and video for a long time. What I would do was either take a 35mm camera, or when cell phones began to infiltrate the culture, I would thank you, Kiko. She just found this thing from that show in Lecce. Yeah.
Cool.
Right. Anyway.
Wow.
So I would take on,
Cool.
thank you, Kiko. I would take on my my camera or cell phone and clandestinely photograph people. And it's completely rude, but it is what it is. I felt it sounds bad. I had the right to do that. I just took the opportunity to do that. Yeah, well, there it is, absolutely. And I've been really fortunate about it. I only had one confrontation in New York, and that's a whole other kind of story with somebody who smashed my camera. But that was a maturing moment. But what I would do was I would perhaps look like I'm looking at, something, and instead of scrolling, I'd be snapping photos. And so these are really up close, tight photographs of people on the bus. And I called it, instead of rapid transit, I called it a vapid transit, because people are basically sequestered. They are, this was like a public look at private space, or people trying to create a sense of security, safety, etc. Distance and nearness, as a matter of fact, is really what it was about. So at any rate, I got an invitation to do a show with a formidable senior artist, Uccio Bionde, in Seye Mesepica, which is just outside of Lecce. And I just happened to say to her, you know what, I also do mixed media work. I'm a painter as well. So she got another show from me in the heart of the Historic Center in Lecce at Scaramuzza Contemporary Art. So that's how I got to Lecce. I loved it so much. I wanted to figure out a way to get back to Italy. Because of the experience with the postcard exchange program, which is not mail art, we just use mail to facilitate the transportation. It's really important for me to say that it's also not copy art, and it's also not rubber stamp art. I mean, I have some prejudices around that, but the point is that I came up with this scheme, this idea to get back to Italy, and that was to get together with maybe, of the 500 artists that we worked with, I think there were 4 or 5 core people. My partner, Akiko Suzuki, out of Japan. Friends, Lorna Crane, and people may know her. She's a renowned workshop artist, a fantastic artist. Vera Gerstenkorn out of Israel, and Chaewon Ho from Seoul, Korea. So 3 of us are still active, and
Wow.
3 are around and still friends and all of that, but not as active. So we began to do these exchanges of fragments, detritus, scraps, things that didn't work for us, things off the floor, and mailed it to each other. So it was like getting a trash Christmas every time the mail came, and you would just make new work out of it. We decided in 2014, based on Lorna's experience at a place called Palazzo Casanardi in Venice, to meet there face to face, and it was just remarkable. It was incredible. We had people like John Crabtree out of the UK who came, several other artists out of Venice, the Fluxus group out of Treviso came and met with us and took part in workshops, etc. But the point of it is that the direct experience of finally meeting face to face and finding various ways of collaborating. We'd already established we could do that remotely through the mail, etc. But when we were very tentative and very nervous with each other, because you think you have this knowledge of each other or this relationship, you realize, oh my God, that's only been through a screen. And so now you're living, working in the same place, and we have this great advantage at the Palazzo where we had a place to stay, and you would just roll out of bed, so to speak, into the studio. And so we had 24-hour access. It was actually a dream come true. We had no idea how incredible it was. And so in retrospect, as a matter of fact, it was almost a detriment because we got used to that. This was our expectation. Unfortunately, the Palazzo closed during the pandemic. Right. And since 2014, we've actually had 30-day residencies in Senegal, in Mazatlan. We've gone to Lecce a couple of times, and then we did a total of 2 in Venice. So this will be our 8th residency coming up in Lecce during the month of May. We've kind of condensed it and made it a private gap affair because the group is so large. And we found out that, we really don't need to make it open to the public per se. It's not really a money-making thing. It's more about a community-building thing. So we've had tons of exhibitions.
And it is a traveling collection of your work that is shown. And you do have a GoFundMe to help that collection move. Yeah. And so can you talk about that and how that came about?
Right. Well, the GoFundMe campaign is specific to a traveling exhibition of many that we have, but specific for Crossing Borders. Crossing Borders was introduced by a then member and a guy who continues to be both a good friend and as I called you, a friend of GAP, Ron Weigers. We are part, Akiko and I, as individual artists, are part of his Tin Dents platform in the Netherlands, in Utrecht. And he came up with an idea called Crossing Borders, which had to do, and this was, I think, 2019, which had to do with personal borders, social borders, cultural, political, whatever you got, sexual, whatever that obstacle is that keeps you from having access to your fullest self or your own freedoms or involvement in the society. These are borders, and it could just be, hey, I'm really shy. That's a border to get over. And so we had an exhibition in Belgium, in Ghent, at a place called Campo Santo, which is, I think, a 14th century funereal space, cemetery that also has a big cathedral in it. Fantastic. A lot of our members showed up, etc., traveled there. We then imported it to the Jennifer Perlmutter Gallery, also here in Northern California in Lafayette in 2020. And it's a self-contained show that does expand based on what the space is that we want to do this in, or the kind of focus that we want to take. For instance, with the Perlmutter show, I wanted a more conscious political or social presence, whereas I'm not telling people, please send me your social and political work. Just give me what your impression is of Crossing Borders. But my job as a curator is to also kind of fine-tune, show per show, a space per space. So yes, we have a GoFundMe campaign. If someone wants more information about it, they can either go on the Global Art Project website or our Instagram account. It is Global Art Project. Or PM me, and I'll give you further information about how you can support. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I think, I think it's important. I think it's, you're doing important work. You're opening borders, literally, by inviting people from all over the country, all over the world. And I think it's remarkable what you've done with GAP. Also, you teach in your studio 4 times a year. You have your workshops and you do mentoring. So Let's talk about that for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to open it
Sure.
up for questions, and then we're going to show that
Okay.
painting again that
You
you
know,
showed
I
me. So.
I very rarely open the studio up anymore for either workshops or mentoring. And I still do have it for mentoring if the person doesn't have a studio situation. But I found, going back to the live work dichotomy, I live here and I work here. And so it's a blessing, and it's also a weird situation sometimes. So I try to have that separation as much as I can. I work out of, lately, the last 2 years, I think, out of a place called Studio 55 in Martinez. It's a fantastic facility. I don't know, I'm guessing 3,000 square feet, et cetera, total access to the space. The whole intent or the thrust of what my workshops are about, partly we've talked about the no mind, body, mind, spirit kind of trilogy or triptych, but also to break outside of habitual ways of working. I often say, if you will follow some of the suggestions, work in a way that you don't work in a media that you're not used to working in, watch, observe other people, just follow a suggestion. If this doesn't work for you, you can always go back to what you were doing tomorrow. So it's sort of like to open yourself up. It's to take risks, and maybe most importantly for me, my workshops and I think my mentoring, in my mind anyway, are about having faith or trust in yourself that you can resolve things, and part of that relationship is obviously very personal. It's very special, just as art practice is. It's not a typical kind of a relationship. So I am honored that someone trusts in my judgment or my presence enough to open themselves up, to show their vulnerabilities. I, on the other hand, have to be able to do the same thing, because I don't have all the answers. I'm learning from you. It's a reciprocal kind of relationship. So yeah, we're both learning at the same time. We're both taking risks. I need to put into practice what I'm talking to you about. I find very often in my own studio practice that I will hit the same kind of walls or challenges that I'm counseling somebody else about, and I need to say, Carl, you need to actually practice what you preach. And that's a good thing, but it's also a challenging thing. The mentoring comes out of, pardon me, the workshops, usually where if someone has seen some benefit to the just these short 3-hour workshops, that we get a little more intense, and we create a custom program. It could be anything from portfolio review to actually working at some painting or collage practices, etc. It could be visiting galleries and just having somebody to bounce your ideas off of. I help people get into grad school in this kind of business, and it's different. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So I'm going to open the panel now for questions. So if you guys have any questions, this is the perfect time to ask Carl anything that's on your mind. But so let me ask you something. What is the choice of materials in your practice? Paper, wood panel, canvas, everything?
Yeah, well, yeah, everything, and it varies. I think that there is a certain safety, if you will, or there's more comfortability in working on good paper. I use primarily watercolor paper, Fabriano, if that's around. Canson, I like a lot, the XL. I think it's 300 pound, and maybe more, because it's open, it's more inviting for experimentation, that I'm not thinking about preciousness so much. And then I try to discard that as well, because it's not like, okay, work on paper and now take this discovery or this result and put it on canvas or put it on a wooden panel, because each way the materials respond and work completely in different ways. And I find that if I respect my materials, that they give themselves to me, so to speak, that they kind of reveal the different ways that they can allow me to interact with it. And so paper. We were looking at something yesterday when the consultant came over, and she was asking about there's some wrinkles or tears. I says, you know what? I've learned to let paper be paper. It's going to screw up. It's going to bend. It's okay. It's contemporary art. If a buyer or collector, yeah.
It's going to
Well,
frustrate.
exactly. But I mean, so you kind of incorporate that into the aesthetic, this kind of imperfection, and that's okay. That's all right. I've had to learn that.
So thanks, Mike, for the GoFundMe
great
information. And Tamara is asking if the postcard crossing that you were talking about is the www.postcardcrossing.
No, the crossing had to do, I have no idea what that is. The crossing is crossing borders. That's an exhibition. The postcard project that we were involved in was called Knee Jerk Fragmentation Project. And again, you know, if you go to Facebook, for instance, or if you go online, knee jerk, Knee jerk, to imply a spontaneity or something. And it's knee jerk frag project or knee jerk fragmentation project. I'll post kind of an archival trove is definitely on Facebook, and you could at least get a prompt out of just doing a search on Google.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for answering that. And maybe to close it off, what would be maybe 3 things that you would tell an emerging artist or even an established artist?
Definitely trust your instinct. Trust your instinct. Probably more than 3 things, because even trust your instinct shoots into other things. Follow your passion. Absolutely. Follow your passion, trust your instincts, and keep working. Just work. It gets better. Here's the deal. There's a lot of people that are called institutions, and a lot of that has to do with they just stuck with it. Even if the work or the music or the writing is lousy, they're an institution because they stuck with it. So stick with it. Don't overly judge yourself. You know, have fun with it. Life is short. Boom. Yeah.
Boom. I love it. So
sure.
Let's show one more time the painting the second painting that you are donating for Feeding America. And hopefully, if you are interested in this painting from Carl, make sure you DM me or DM Carl, and we'll let you know. You make the donation directly to Feeding America. You send us the receipt, and then Carl will send you the artwork.
I really will.
To you directly. And I seriously cannot thank you enough, Carl, for this time, for your generosity with opening your heart to all of us and just showing all of us how, you know, you have the light inside of you that it just shines. And I congratulate you on your life and your work and on being my new friend. I really respect you a lot. So thank you so much for coming in to tap into your creativity.
Absolutely.
And being part of my
Thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you. This is just the beginning, etc., etc. All right. All right.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
good
Saturday.
kids.
Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah, be good.